Hey, I'm Bob at I Like to Make Stuff. Today we're gonna update this room and make a huge mural. This video is sponsored by Squarespace. If you need a website, domain, or online store, make it with Squarespace. So recently we just built the ping pong table, which is right here in this room that I'm not exactly sure what to call because it's gonna end up being kind of a game room, playroom / podcasting studio hangout area. So if you have some ideas for the name, let me know down below. But right now we're gonna start building it out and modifying it to make it be all of those different things. We're gonna put a big mural on this wall, and it's a concrete wall, and so the first step is to fill all of the holes on this wall and take down the old shelf. We're gonna be recording in this space as well, but all of my audio equipment and everything is in that room in the office. So we're also gonna have to cut a hole in this wall to make a pass through for some cabling. We also don't really have the correct lighting in here. We're using temporary stuff for now. So we're gonna take down the old fixture and build a new one to put up there. The first step was to fill all of the holes on the wall with some spackle. There were a bunch of nails in this wall that I had to pull out, and when you pull a nail out of concrete, it often takes a bunch of the concrete with it. So I had a bunch of big pits that I had to fill up. This wall is also really textured, and so there was no worry about having to get it smooth. Oh, and check this out. It's one of the oldest things that I have that I made. I made it in my granddad's shop in 1985. Pretty cool. After that, I pulled down the shelf. Now this is just a wooden shelf nailed to the wall, so the wood parts came off pretty easily. But the brackets that held it up onto the wall were a little bit more stubborn. After I tried to knock them out, most of the wood would fall away, but the nails would stay stuck in the wall. And every time I pulled one of the nails out, it took some more concrete with it. There were a couple of them that I couldn't pull out, and I had to knock them into place, and then I filled all the holes with spackle. Before we can do any of the other projects for this video, we need to first put up a light so we can see what we're doing. I'm gonna use this. This is an LED flat panel light, and it's the same ones that I use here in the shop. These are actually made to drop in for a drop ceiling. That's the purpose of them. All the electronics are right here in this little box, so that's where you wire into. They have some hangers, but we're gonna make a simple box around the perimeter of this so that we can mount it up to the ceiling. Of course, if you have a regular shop light, you could just mount that. I measured the outside dimensions of the light and then cut down some strips of wood a little bit bigger. I had to make sure that the pieces were as long as the light plus the thickness of the wood. Then I measured the maximum thickness of the light to make sure that I could cut a dado the right size. I'm gonna put on the dado stack to cut the dado for the light to fit in, and I realized that if somebody's never used this, they may not really understand how it works. It's a set of two blades, two normal saw blades with just a few teeth, and then there's a piece of paper that comes and tells you if you're looking for a certain thickness, how you stack things up. So you have the two blades on the outside. It comes with these, which are called chippers, and you put those in between the blades. And then for more precise thicknesses, it comes with these spacers, and there's a few other little pieces. But basically, if you want to get a certain thickness, it gives you the combination of items to stack up and mount in your saw to cut a dado of that size. I set up the stack so that the dado would be about 1/16 of an inch wider than the widest part of the light. Then I moved the fence over to make sure I had a little lip underneath the light and ran each one of the pieces through. And you'll notice here that the dados run all the way to the end of each piece, meaning when you put the box together, you're gonna see the dado. This is just a quick and dirty fixture, so those gaps don't bother me, but I'll probably come back later on and fill them up with wood filler to hide them. I used some wood glue to butt joint these pieces together and shot in some brad nails to hold them in place while the glue dried. I put in one long side and two short sides and then slid the light down into the gap. I glued on the final side, but if you thought you wanted to take it off later, you could always screw it in place instead. Got the frame made. It's super simple, which is great. These two pieces are gonna fit on the inside, and so these are gonna get screwed into the ceiling, and then we'll drive in some screws from the outside of the box to hold it onto these pieces. And that's, of course, after we do all the wiring to this box. Anytime you're working with electricity, turn off the breaker. Don't do it at the switch, just do it the right way so you don't get hurt. I took down the old light and then figured out where the joists were around it. I drove in one of these bracket pieces into the joist and then found roughly a perpendicular line across the ceiling to put in the other one. I screwed in the second bracket into that joist and made sure that the two brackets were parallel to each other. I put the light in place and then figured out where that they were going to fit on the brackets, brought it back down and pre-drilled some holes into the side so that I could screw the light fixture onto the bracket pieces. Got this light wired up, so we're gonna test it out. Hey, it works. Now let's just put it on the ceiling. So next we're going to punch a hole through that wall, the room where we just were, into the office. The audio equipment is right here. So we're going to punch a hole and pass some audio cables through so we can plug them right here to the interface. So mainly I'm trying to figure out where to make the hole and make sure that it doesn't hit any of the electrical work, which runs right through the middle of the wall right here. So I'm going to go really low. I've got these little covers to cover the hole in the wall. They've got some bristles here so you can feed a cable through. There'll be one of these on both sides of the wall so you can just feed a wire straight through. On the back of this thing, there's a piece that comes off, and I'm going to use this as a template and trace its outline to get the actual hole size. Now that's the right size for this piece to fit in there. So to transfer the hole to the other wall, I'm going to use this knife and actually just poke through here in the corner and push it all the way through, and that'll give me a reference point for the bottom corner.
Of course, then I realized that the knife was actually long enough to cut through both of the walls at the same time, so I used the first hole as a reference to cut the second one. Now these covers are actually made to go in an electrical box. And if you were using electrical cables, you would want them to be in a box up to code. This is just a pass-through for audio cables, so it's not really a big deal. I will say that it was a lot easier to pass the cables through before putting the final covers on. Then it was time to do a little more spackling to get the wall ready to paint the mural.
All right, we're getting ready to do the mural on the wall to get started on it. This is the mural that we're working off of. This was done by my designer and my good friend Forby. He's the one that did my logo and a bunch of other stuff. And so he built this with a grid, and now we're gonna put the grid on the wall so we can transfer the artwork on the wall. But let me show you the details here. He laid it out so that the red lines make a 12-inch by 12-inch grid. All of the little blue lines are a piece of 1-inch tape, so we can tape out all of these different shapes, and then we can go back and paint in each one of the colored sections. So we're gonna start by putting down the grid, the red lines, with a chalk line.
We measured up and across the wall and used a chalk line to make the grid. But we found out that it actually didn't come off the paint as well as I wanted. And since we didn't really paint the wall ahead of time, I went ahead and primed over everything and then started to do the grid in a different way. This time I used a laser level to get a center line across the wall, up and down. And from here, I marked a mark every 12 inches. Then I moved the line up and made another mark every 12 inches. Essentially, instead of making the lines, I made where all the lines crossed. This gave me the points where all of the diagonal pieces need to cross and intersect. I used some 1-inch tape, following the design and using the marks that I'd made on the wall to lay out the entire thing. This took about an hour to do, and it was really easy to pull off sections and make adjustments if I needed to. After that, I put a 1, 2, or 3 corresponding to the paint colors in each section to make sure that we painted them all the right colors.
This video is sponsored by Squarespace. Whether you want to create a new website to show off your work, or create a new podcast, or sell things online, Squarespace is a really fantastic way to set up a website with no programming experience whatsoever. They've got beautiful templates that you can start with, and then you customize the look and the feel and the features all to what you want to have on your website. If you've already got a domain, you can transfer that over, or you can just get a new one through Squarespace itself when you set up your site. And if you do want to set one up, go to squarespace.com/ILTMS and get everything up and running, and when you're ready to launch, use the code ILTMS to get 10% off your first purchase. It's a great way to start a new website. Be sure to go check them out. That's squarespace.com/ILTMS. Thanks, Squarespace.
When you have a textured wall, it's tough to get a really sharp paint line, even with good painter's tape. I made sure to press the tape down really well, but then when adding the paint, I started on the tape and painted toward the center of the shape. This way, no paint would squirt underneath the tape. Another great way to help this is to paint or spray on a clear coat over top of the tape. It seals up the gap in between the tape and the wall and gives you a sharp line. We pulled off all the tape and had to wait for the mural to dry, so we cleaned up the rest of the room and got it ready to use. Part of that was hanging some guitar hangers. This is where all of my music instruments are going to be and where I'm going to play. After it was all cleaned up, it started looking pretty good.
I'm super happy with how the mural turned out and how the room looks. I still need to get a couch for over there underneath the window, but it's definitely better than it was before. This is one of the last rooms in the house that we haven't even touched at all until now, so it's really nice to have it moving forward. There's still a few things to do here and there. Some of the lines got a little smudgy because this is a concrete wall, so it's not perfectly flat. But if you were to make a mural like this on a flat surface like drywall, the paint and the tape would give you a really sharp line. But either way, it looks pretty good now, and I can always go back and touch up the edges if I need to. It's great to have some light in here. It's great to have some of my music stuff set up so I can start playing music again, and we have the ping pong table. Anyway, I know this was kind of a smattering of different things, but I hope you enjoyed it. Hope you got something out of it. And if you learned something new, please let me know down in the comments. I've got lots of other types of projects that you may be interested in. Be sure to check those out, and don't forget to subscribe. That's it for this one, guys. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Hey, I'm Bob, and I like to make stuff. Today, I just thought about something weird. I'm gonna use this knife, sword, drywall sword.
That's not a knife.